My name is Mark Wilson. I'm a mathematics and logic teacher at Logos School here in Moscow, Idaho. And I will be reading from the Fagles translation, the one recommended by my wife as one of the more readable and better and easy to work with translations. Iliad, Book 15. Back through jutting stakes and across the trench they fled, and hordes were cut down at the Argives' hands. The rest, only after they reached the chariots, stood fast, blanched with fear, whipped in desperate flight. That moment Zeus awoke on the heights of Ida, stretched out by Hera, queen of the golden throne. He leapt to his feet. He saw the Trojans and Achaeans, one side routed, the other harrying them in panic. Achaeans attacking, and god Poseidon led the way. And Zeus saw Hector sprawled on the battlefield, his comrades kneeling round him as he panted, struggling hard for breath, his senses stunned, vomiting blood. The man who struck him down was not the weakest Argive. At the sight of Hector, the father of men and gods, filled with pity now, and shooting at a terrible dark glance down at Hera, burst out at her. "What a disaster you create! Uncontrollable Hera, you and your treachery, halting Hector's assault and routing Hector's armies. I wouldn't be surprised, my queen, if you were the first to reap the pernicious whirlwind you have sown. I'll whip you, stroke on stroke. Don't you recall the time I strung you in midair and slung those two massive anvils down from your feet and lashed both hands with a golden chain you could not break? There in the clouds and high clear sky you dangled, and the mighty gods on steep Olympus raged away, impotent. What could they do to set you free? Standing there, helpless. And any god I caught, I'd seize and send him plunging over the ramparts, head first, till he hit the earth, barely alive. Not even then would the stark grief of Heracles release my breaking heart, my own godlike son. You, with the north wind's help, had coaxed the gales to send him scudding over the barren salt sea. You always plotting miseries for my son. You bore him off to the crowded town of Kos, but I there saved him, whisked him away to safety, back to the stallion land of Argos, worn with torment. I will help you remember. You'll live up to your treacheries. You will see if your warm embrace serves you then. Your bed of lust where you sank me in your arms. Down from the gods you came to waylay me. You seduced me blind." Her eyes wide, Queen Hera shuddered before his thunder, protesting, swearing a flight of winged oaths. "Earth be my witness now, the vaulting sky above, and the dark cascading waters of the Styx. I swear by the greatest, grimmest oath that binds the happy gods, by your sacred head, by the bed of our own marriage, that I, at least, would never take in vain. Never by will of mine did the god of earthquakes wreak havoc among the Trojan ranks, and Hector and surge to help their foes. It must be his own rage that drives him on. He pitied the sight of the Argives pinned against their ships. Not I. Why, I'd like to be the first to counsel him, to take your lead, Zeus, wherever you command, my king of the black cloud." A rousing appeal, and the father of men and gods looked down and smiled, and took command with a flight of winged orders. "Excellent Hera. Now, if in the years to come you will accord with me, my wide-eyed queen, throned with me in the gods' decisive sessions, then Poseidon, bent as he is to go his own way, must change at once, and wrench his will to ours, to yours and mine united. So then, Hera, if you mean what you say, down to the last word, go back now to the deathless tribes of gods, and summon Ares to come out before my presence. Summon Apollo too, lord of the famous bow. Ares will fly to Archaea's bronze-armed troops, and direct the god who shakes the earth to stop, to quit the war and return to his own ocean halls. And let Apollo drive Prince Hector back to battle. Breathe power back in his lungs, make him forget the pains that rack his heart. Let him whip the Achaeans in headlong panic rout, and roll them back once more, tumbling back on the oar-swept ships of Peleus' son Achilles. and he will launch his comrade Patroclus into action, and glorious Hector will cut him down with a spear in front of Troy. Once Patroclus has slaughtered the whole battalions of strong young fighting men, and among them all my shining son Sarpedon. But then, in rage for Patroclus, brilliant Achilles will bring Prince Hector down, and then, from that day on, I'll turn the tide of war back. The fighting goes, no stopping it, ever, all the way till Achaean armies seize the beetling heights of Troy through Athena's grand design. But till that hour, I will never cease my anger, nor will I permit a single immortal god to save the Argive forces, not till Achilles' prayer has been fulfilled. So I vowed it first. I bowed my head in assent. That day the goddess Thetis clutched my knees, begging me to exalt Achilles' scourge of the cities. And the white-armed goddess Hera obeyed at once. Clearing Ida's peaks, she soared for sheer Olympus. Quick as a thought goes flashing through a man who's travelled the world. Ah, to be there, or there, as his mind swarms with journeys, fresh desires. So quick in her eager flight flew noble Hera now, and scaling steep Olympus, went among the gods, the immortal powers, through Zeus's halls. They all sprang to their feet at sight of Hera, lifting cups to greet her, crowding round the queen. But she passed the rest, and took a cup from Themis, flushed with beauty, who ran to meet her first and hailed her now with winged words of welcome. Hera, what brings you back? You look so hurried. Oh, I know it. The son of Cronus has terrified you, your everlasting husband. Please, Themis, the white-armed goddess Hera answered firmly. Don't ask me to go through that ordeal again. You know his rage yourself, so rigid, unrelenting, but you keep on presiding over the gods, Themis, the feasting in the halls. You'll hear it all, and with you all the immortals. What a chain of disasters Zeus brings to light. Nothing to lift all spirits alike, I warn you. Not among men, not among gods, if one still left who warms to feasts, his heart at peace these days. With those bleak words, Queen Hera took her seat. The gods looked grim throughout the halls of Zeus. She smiled with her lips only, her forehead furrowed over her dark brows, as her anguish rose, and she addressed them all. What fools we are, storming against Zeus. We're mad. And still we engage him, trying to block his way with a word or a show of force. But there he sits, off and away, with never a care or qualm for us, claiming that he is among the deathless gods on high, is first in strength and power, none in the world his rival. So each of you here must take what blows he sends. Why, Ares, I gather he has just received a share. His son is dead in battle, his dear son, Scyphilus. Doesn't invincible Ares claim to be his father? Fighting words, and Ares pounded his sturdy thighs with the flats of both hands, and let loose in grief. Now, you gods of Olympus, who could blame me now if I descend on Achaea's ships and avenge my son, my butchered son? Even if fate will crush me, striking me down with a thunderbolt of Zeus, sprawled in the blood and dust with dead men's corpses. With that, he called his henchmen, Rout and Terror, to yoke his team as the gods strapped on the shining gear. And now, with some greater disaster might have come from Zeus, some wrath, some harsher rage to break the gods on high, if Pallas, Athena, fearing the worst for all immortals, had not leapt from her throne, bolted through the great gates, torn the helmet off his head, the shield off his back, and snatching the brazen spear from his burly grip, propped it against a pillar, and dressed the war god down in all his fury. Maniac, out of your senses! You're ruined! What are your ears for, Ares? Can't you hear the truth? Your wits are gone. Where's your respect for others? Can't you grasp what the white-armed goddess tells us? And she's just returned from Olympian Zeus, just now. What's your pleasure? To fill your own cup of pain, then slink back to Olympus, whipped and fuming, forced? You're planting the seeds of endless trouble for us all. He will leave those men in a flash, Achaeans, Trojans, overweening Trojans, and back great Zeus will come to batter us on Olympus, seize one after another, gods guilty and innocent routed all together. So now I tell you, drop this anger for your son. By now some fighter, better than he, a stronger hand has gone down in his own blood, or soon will go. It is no small labour to rescue all mankind, every mother's son. With that sharp warning, Athena seated headlong Ares on his throne. But Queen Hera summoned Apollo from the halls, and Iris too, the messenger of the immortals, and gave them both their winged marching orders. Zeus directs you to Ida with all good speed. But once you arrive and meet great Zeus's glance, do whatever the Father drives you on to do. And with that command, Queen Hera strode home and regained her throne. But the two launched out in flight and reached Ida with all her springs, mother of flocks. They found the thundering son of Cronus seated high on Gargaron Peak, crowned with fragrant cloud. Coming before the Lord of Storm and Lightning, the two just stood there, waiting. Nor was his heart displeased to see them both, how fast they'd obeyed his loving wife's commands. And first he issued Iris's winging orders. Away, Iris, quick as you can to the grand sea lord Poseidon. Give him my message, start to finish, and see that every word of it rings exactly so. Command Poseidon to quit the war and slaughter now. Go back to the tribes of gods, or down to his bright sea. But if he will not obey my orders, if he spurns them, let him beware, heart and soul, for all his power. He can never muster the will to stand my onslaught. I claim I am far greater than he in striking force. I am the firstborn too, yet the spirit inside him never shrinks from claiming to be my equal, never, though other gods will cringe from me in terror. And Iris, riding the wind, obeyed his orders, swooping down from Ida's peak to sacred Troy. Like the snow or freezing hail that pelts from clouds, when the north wind, born in the clear heaven, blasts it on, so in an eager rush of speed, the wind-swift Ares flew and stopped beside the famous god of earthquakes, calling out to him, "Here is a message for you, god of the sea-blue mane, who grips the earth. I speed this word to you from storming Zeus. He commands you to quit the war and slaughter now. Go back to the tribes of gods, or down to your bright sea. But if you will not obey his orders, if you spurn them, he threatens to come here in person, fight you down, power against power. Avoid his grasp, he warns. He claims he is far greater than you in striking force. He is the firstborn too. Yet the spirit inside you never shrinks from claiming to be his equal, never, though other gods will cringe from him in terror." But the glorious god of earthquakes shook in anger. "What outrage! Great as he is, what overweening arrogance! So force me, will he, to wrench my will to his? I with the same high honours? 3 brothers we are, all sprung from Cronus, all of us brought to birth by Rhea, Zeus and I, Hades the third, the lord of the dead beneath the earth. The world was split 3 ways, each received his realm. When we shook the lots, I drew the sea, my foaming eternal home, and Hades drew the land of the dead, engulfed in haze and night, and Zeus drew the heavens, the clouds in the high clear sky. But the earth and Olympus heights are common to us all. So I will never live at the beck and call of Zeus. No, at his royal ease, as powerful as he is, let him rest content with his third of the world. Don't let him frighten me with his mighty hands. What does he take me for, some coward out and out? He'd better aim his terrible salvos at his own, all his sons and daughters. He is their father. They have to obey his orders. It is their fate." Iris, quick as the breezes, tried to soothe him. "Wait, god of the sea-blue mane who grips the earth. You really want me to take that harsh, unbending answer back to Zeus? No change of heart, not even a little? The heart of the great, you know, can always change. You know how the Furies always stand by older brothers." The lord of the earthquakes yielded ground in answer. "True, Iris, immortal friend, how right you are. It is a fine thing when a messenger knows what's proper. But how it galls me, it wounds me to the quick when the father tries to revile me with brute abuse. his equal in rank, our shared fates, our fated shares of the world the same. Still, this time I will yield for all my outrage. But I tell you this, and there's anger in my threat. If ever, against my will, and Athena, queen of armies, Hera and Hermes, the god of fire Hephaestus, if Zeus ever spares the towering heights of Troy, if he ever refuses to take her walls by force, and give the Argive troops resounding triumph, let Zeus know full well, the breach between us both will never heal. A sharp tremor, and the massive god of earthquakes left Achaea's lines. Into the surf he dove, and heroes missed him sorely. That very instant, storming Zeus dispatched Apollo. Go, my friend, to the side of Hector, armed in bronze. The god of quakes, who grips and pounds the earth, has just this moment plunged into his own bright sea, driving away from all my mounting anger. Just think what the gods would have heard if we had come to blows. Even those beneath the ground who circle Kronos. Better for me this way, Poseidon too, to yield before my mighty hands, outraged as he is. Not without sweat we would have called it quits. But now take up your hand, my storm cloud shield, its dark tassels flying. Shake it over the Argives. Stampede their heroes in panic, archer of the skies. But make this glorious Hector your main concern. Rouse his breakneck courage till, racing in terror, the Argives reach the fleet and the Hellespont en route. From that point on, I will plan my tactics, give commands to grant the Argives breathing room in battle. Apollo did not neglect the father's orders. Down from the Ida's peaks he swooped like a hawk, the killer of doves, the fastest things on wings. He found Prince Hector, the son of wise King Priam, sitting up now, sprawled on the ground no longer, just regaining his strength, just beginning to recognize his comrades around him. His heavy sweating, his hard breathing stopped, the moment the will of storming Zeus revived him. Apollo, the archer, stood beside him taunting, Hector, son of Priam, why so far from your troops, sitting here, half dead? Some trouble has come your way. Hector struggled for words, his helmet flashing. Who are you, my lord, who of the high gods, to probe me face to face? Haven't you heard? I was killing his friends against the ships when the lord of war, cry Ajax, struck me down with a boulder square across my chest. He took the fight right out of me, I can tell you. I thought for certain I'd join the dead and descend to the house of death this very day. I thought I'd breathed my last. But Lord Apollo, the distant deadly archer, reassured him. Courage. Look what a strong support the son of Kronos speeds from Ida to take your side and shield you. I am Phoebus Apollo, lord of the golden sword, who saved you before, and along with you, your towering city too. So up now, Hector. Command your drivers here in all their hundreds to lash their plunging teams and the hollow ships, and I'll surge on ahead, clearing the whole way for the team's assault. I'll bend the Argives back. That breathed tremendous strength into the famous captain. As a stallion, full-fed at the manger, stalled for too long, breaking free from his tether, gallops down the plain, out for his favourite plunge in the river's cool currents, thundering in his pride. His head flung back, his mane streaming over his shoulders, sure and sleek in his glory, knees racing over to the fields and the stallion haunts he loves. So Hector hurtled on, his legs driving, his knees pumping, spurring his reinsman once he had heard the god's command. And the Argives wheeled and gave ground quickly. Think how dogs and huntsmen off in the wilds rush on some antlered stag or skittish mountain goat. But a rocky gorge or a shadowed forest gives them shelter. They see it's not their lot to bring that quarry down. Their shouting only flushes a great bearded lion, ramping across their path, suddenly charging them, scattering men and packs despite their lust for battle. So up to now the Achaeans kept advancing, close formation, stabbing away with swords and rugged two-edged spears. But once they saw tall Hector attack the ranks again, they wheeled in terror. Hearts collapsed at their heels. But Thoas, son of Andreamon, spurred them on. Aetola's best by far, skilled with the spear, superb at cut and thrust, and few Achaeans could put him down in debate when the young men vie and struggle over points. Now forth he came, with calls to back his comrades. Look, a genuine miracle right before my eyes. Hector's escaped again. He's risen from the dead. And just as each of us hoped in his heart, he had dropped and died at the hands of the giant Ajax. But again, some god stoops down and saves this Hector. And hasn't he wiped enough of us out already? Now he'll make more slaughter. Well, I know. He'd never be at the front, smashing our lines, unless old Thunder, Zeus, had put him on his feet. So come, friends, do as I say. All take my lead. The rank and file go back, withdraw to the ships. But we, who claim the army's finest champion, stand our ground, face him first, try to beat him off. Spears at the ready. For all his fury, trust me, he'll quake before he penetrates our front. Sound tactics. The captains hung on his word and fell in line, squads forming around great Ajax, King Idomeneus, Teucer, Myronides, Meges, a match for Ares, closed tight on the onset, calling all their best to brace and face Prince Hector and Hector's Trojans. Behind them, rank and file withdrew to Achaea's ships. But packed in a mass, the Trojans came on pounding. Hector leading the way with long leading strides, and heading the van in person came the god Apollo, shoulders wrapped in a cloud, gripping the storm shield, the tempest terror, dazzling tassels flaring at its front. The bronzesmith god of fire gave it to Zeus to bear and strike fear in men, and Apollo gripped it now. Locked in his two fists, he led the Trojans on. But packed in a mass, the Argives stood their ground, deafening cries in battle breaking from both sides, as whipping arrows leapt away from bowstrings. Showers of spears raining from daring, hardy arms went deep into soldiers' bodies, quick to the fight. But showers of others, cut short, halfway before they could graze glistening skin, struck the ground, still lusting to sink in flesh. Long as Apollo held the storm shield firm in his grasp, the weapons hurtled side to side, and men kept falling. But once he looked at the fast Archaean drivers square in the eyes, shook the shield, and loosed an enormous battle cry himself. Apollo stunned the high courage in all their chests. They lost their grip, forgot their fighting fury, routed like herds of cattle or big flocks of sheep, when two wild beasts stampeded them away in terror, suddenly pouncing down in their midst, pitch darkness and shepherd off and gone. So the defenseless Argives panicked, routed. Apollo hurled fear in their hearts and handed Hector and all his Trojans instant glory. There, man killed man, in the mad scatter of battle. Hector finished Stichius, finished Archesius off, the one a chief of the Botulans, armed in bronze, the other brave Menelaus' trusty comrade. Aeneas slaughtered Medon, and Aeacus outright. Medon, the bastard son of the royal king Oileus, little Ajax's brother, but Medon lived in Phalanx, banished from his native land. He'd killed a kinsman dear to Aeolus' wife, his stepmother Europeus, but Aeacus became a captain of Athens' troops. Spheles' son he was called, and Buculus' grandson. Polydamas killed Mecistius. Palaetes cut down Achaeus on the first onset. Dashing Agenor cut down Colonius, and Paris landed Dioecius deep below the shoulder, ran him through from behind as he fled from the front, and the bronze spear came jutting out of his chest. When the Trojans tore the war gear off their bodies, Argives clambered back in a tangled mass, scrambling back through the sharp stakes and deep pit of the trench, fleeing left and right, forced inside the ramparts. So Hector commanded his Trojans, sounding out, "Now storm the ships, drop those bloody spoils. Any straggler I catch hanging back from the fleet, right here on the spot, I'll put that man to death. No kin, no woman committed to his corpse to the flames. The dogs will tear his flesh before our walls." With a full shoulder stroke, he flogged his horses on, loosing a splitting war cry down the Trojan ranks, and all cried back in answer, a savage roar rising, driving teams and chariots close in line with his. And Apollo, far in the lead, the god's feet kicking the banks of the deep trench down with a god's ease, tumbled earth in the pit between, bridging it with a dike immense and wide and long as a hurtling spear will fly, when a man makes practice casts to test his strength. Holding formation now, the Trojans rolled across it, Apollo heading them, gripping the awesome storm shield, and he tore that archive rampart down with the same ease some boy at the seashore knocks sandcastles down. He no sooner builds his playthings up, child's play, than he wrecks them, all with the hands and kicking feet, just for the sport of it. God of the wild cry, Apollo, so you wrecked the Achaeans' work and drove men who had built it up with all that grief and labour into headlong panic rout. Achaeans stampeding back till they reined in hard, huddling tight by the stems and shouting out to each other, flung their arms to all the immortals, each man crying out a prayer. But none as rapt as Nestor, Achaea's watch and ward, who stretched his hands to the starry skies and prayed, Father Zeus, if ever in Argos's golden wheatlands one of us burned the fat thighs of sheep and bulls and begged a safe return, and you promised with a nod, remember it now, Olympian. Save us from this ruthless day. Don't let these Trojans mow us down in droves. So he pleaded, and hearing the old man's prayers, Zeus, who rules the world, let forth a great crack of thunder, rending the skies. But Trojans, thrilled at the sound of Zeus's thunder, pitched themselves at the Argives still more fiercely, summoning up their fiery lust for battle. Like a giant breaker rearing up from rangy seas, crashed over a ship's sides, driven in by the winds, and the blast builds the comber's crushing impact. A hoarse roar. Trojans stormed over the rampart, lashing their teams to fight against the ships, hurling their two-edged spears at close range there. Trojans from lurching cars, but Achaeans from high decks, scrambled aloft black hulls, lunged down with long pikes, jointed and clinched and tipped with rippling bronze. They kept on board for bloody fights at sea. Now, as long as the armies fought to take the rampart, far from the fast ships, Patroclus sat out with his friend Eurypylus' shelter, trying to lift the soldiers' hearts with stories, applying soothing drugs to his dreadful wound, as soon as he sought to calm the black waves of pain. But soon as he heard the Trojans storm the wall, and shouts rise from the Achaeans lost in panic rout, Patroclus gave a groan, and slapping his thighs hard with the flats of both hands, burst forth in anguish. I can't stay here with you any longer, Eurypylus, much as you need me. There, a great battle breaks. No, let an aid attend to you while I rush back to Achilles, spur him into a combat. Who knows? With a god's help, I might just rouse him now, bringing his fighting spirit round at last. The persuasion of a comrade has its powers. With the last words, his feet sped him on. Meanwhile, the Argives blocked the Trojan assault, but still they could not repel them from the fleet, outnumbering them as they did. Nor could the Trojans once break through the Argives' bulking forward mass and force their passage through to ships and shelter. Tense as chalk lines marked the cut of the ship's timber, drawn taut and true in a skilled shipwright's hand. Some master craftsman, trained in Athena's school. So tense was the battle line drawn, dead even. Some forces at some ships, some clashing at others. But Hector charged head-on at Ajax, braced for battle, and both warriors fought it out for a single vessel. Nor could Hector burst through and ignite the hull, nor Ajax drive him back. A god drove Hector on. And here came Caletor, the son of Trojan Cletus, sweeping fire against the prow, but famous Ajax stopped him short with a spear and stabbed his chest. Down he crashed. The torch dropped from his fist, right before Hector's eyes. He watched his cousin sprawl in the dust before the huge black ship, and gave a stirring cry to all his units. Trojans, Lycians, Dardan fighters, hand to hand, don't yield an inch, not in these bloody straits. Rescue Caletor before the Argives strip his gear. He's down, he's dead by the ships that crowd the beach. As he raised that cry, he flung his spear at Ajax, but the glinting metal missed, and he hit Nestor's son, Lycophron, Ajax's friends in arm, Cythera born, yet he lived with Ajax once he killed a man on Cythera's holy shores. Hector killed him now with whetted bronze, cleaving his skull above the ear as he stood by Ajax. Down off the ship's stern he dropped, his back slamming the ground, his limbs slack in death, and Ajax shuddered, calling to his brother, "Teucer, my friend, our trusted comrade's dead, master's son who came our way out of Cythera. We lived in our halls together, prized a man as we prized our beloved parents. Hector's killed him. Hurry, where are your arrows fletched with death? Where is the bow that the god Apollo gave you?" Teucer took the challenge, rushed to his side, and reflects bow in his hand, and quiver bristling shafts. He loosed a splattering burst against the Trojans. He picked off Clitus, Pisanor's shining son, and the charioteer to noble Pantheos' son Polydamas, wresting the reins, struggling to head his horses straight for the point where the most battalions panicked, eager to please Prince Hector and all his Trojans. Clitus raced on, but his death came even faster. No one could save him now, strain as they did. A sudden arrow jabbed him in the back, behind the neck, pierced him with pain, and out the car he hurtled. Horses rearing in terror, empty chariot clattering off. But their master Polydamas marked their kill at once, ran and planted himself across the horse's path, and handed them out to Proteon's son Astinois, shouting strict commands, "Watch my every move. Keep the team close by," then veering away himself back again to grapple frontline troops. But Teucer, quick with his neck shaft, the armor aimed at Hector's brazen crest, and he would have stopped his assault on Argive ships, hit him squarely, and torn his life out just as his courage peaked. But he could not dodge the lightning mind of Zeus. Standing guard over Hector, Zeus tore the glory right from Teucer's grasp. He snapped the twisted cord on his handsome bow, just as the archer drew it taut against his man, and the weighted bronze shaft skidded off to the side. The bow dropped from his hand, and Teucer shuddered, calling out to his brother, "Oh, what luck! Look, some power cuts out the fighting, foils our plans. He's knocked the bow from my grip, snapped the string, the fresh gut I tied to the weapon just at dawn to launch the showers of arrows I'd let fly." "Too bad, my friend," said Ajax. "Leave them there, that bow and spill of arrows down on the ground. A god with a grudge against us wreaks them all. Take up a long spear, shield on your shoulder, go for the Trojans, urge your troops to battle. Maybe they've whipped us here, but not without a fight. They will take our benched ships. Call up the joy of war." At that, his brother dropped his bow in his shelter, slung a shield over his shoulder, 4-ply stick. Over his powerful head he set a well-forged helmet, the horsehair crest atop of it tossing, bristling terror. And taking a rugged spear shaft tipped with whetted bronze, the archer went on the run to stand by Ajax's side. But Hector, seeing Teucer's arrows in disarray, let fly a resounding shout to all his units. "Trojans, Lycians, Dardan fighters, hand to hand, fight like men, my friends. Call up your battle fury, make for the hollow ships. I see with my own eyes how Zeus has blocked their finest archers' arrows. Easy to see what Zeus lends to mortals, either to those he gives surpassing glory, or those he saps and wastes, refuses to defend, just as he wastes the Argives' power, but backs us now. So fight by the ships, all together, and that comrade who meets his death and destiny, speared or stabbed, let him die. He dies fighting for fatherland, no dishonour there. He'll leave behind him a wife and sons unscathed, his house and estate unharmed, once these Argives sail for home, the fatherland they love." That was his cry, as Hector put fresh fighting spirit into each man. But Ajax fired the troops on his side too. "Shame on you, Argives! All or nothing now. Die or live, and drive defeat from these ships. You want this flashing Hector to take the fleet, then each man walked the waves to regain his native land? Can't you hear him calling on his armies on full force? This Hector, wild to gut our hulls with fire. He's not inviting them to a dance, believe me. He commands them into battle, No better tactics now than to fight them hand to hand with all our fury. Quick, better to live or die, once and for all, than to die by inches, slowly crushed to death, helpless against the hulls and bloody press, by far inferior men. And that was Ajax's cry, as the giant put fresh fighting spirit into each man. But Hector cut down Schedius now, Perimendes' son, a Phocian chieftain, and Ajax killed Laodamas, captain of infantry, Antenor's splendid son, and Polydamas killed Cililian, Otus outright, Meges' friend, one of the proud Epean leaders. Meges saw him drop. He lunged at Polydamas fast, but he ducked and veered away, and Meges missed him. Apollo was not about to let him fall in front, not Panthus' son, but Meges did hit Chrysimus, stabbed him square in the chest with a thrusting lance, and down he crashed, with Meges tearing the armour off his back, as the Trojan Dolops lunged at him. A crack spearman, Laomedon's grandson, Lampus' big and brawny son, the strongest he sired, the best trained for assault. Dolops quickly went for Meges at close range. He speared his bulging shield, but the solid breastplate warded off the blow. With both plates fitted tight to bind his body, the gear his father brought from Ephyria once, the Celius bank where his host, the Lord Ephides, gave him the sturdy bronze to wear in battle, to beat off the bloody attacks of desperate men, and now it saved his son's young flesh from death. So Meges chopped at the crown of Dolops' bronze helmet, split its spiny ridge with a sharp cleaving spear, and sheared away its bristling horsehair crest. Down in the dust the war gear tumbled, all still glistening, bright in its fresh purple dye. But the man stood his ground, still rearing to fight, his hopes still soaring for triumph. But now Menelaus Atreides, out for blood, moved in to fight for Meges, spear poised in his grip, in from the blind side, and struck from behind the Trojan shoulder so hard. The spear come jutting through his chest in all its fury, and Dolops reeled and sank, face down on the ground. The two men swarmed over him, ripping the armour off his back as Hector called his kinsmen on, all his kinsmen, but marked out Hesition's son, the strong Melanippus, railing first at him. He used to graze his shambling herd at Pericot, long ago when the enemy's forces stood far off, but once the rolling ships of Achaia swept ashore, home he came to Troy, where he shone among the Trojans, living close to Priam, who prized him like his sons. But Hector rebuked him now, shouting out his name, Melanippus, how can you take these things lying down this way? No qualm in your heart for this? Your cousin's dead. Can't you see how they're clawing over Dolops' armour? Follow me now. No more standing back, no fighting these Argives at a distance. Kill them hand to hand. Now, before they topple the towering Ilium down, all our people slaughtered. So with a shout he surged ahead, and his gallant cohort followed. But great Telamonian Ajax spurred the Argives on. Be men, my friends. Discipline, fill your hearts. Dread what comrades say of you in bloody combat. When men dread that, more men come through alive. When soldiers break and run, goodbye glory, goodbye all defences. Up in arms as they were to shield themselves, they took his word to heart, and round the ships they raised a wall of bronze. But against them Zeus impelled the Trojan ranks, as Menelaus, lord of war, urged Anticulus. None of our younger troops, Anticulus, none is faster of foot than you, or tougher in combat. Why not leap right in and lay some Trojan out? Menelaus withdrew as he drove Anticulus on. Out of the front he sprang, glaring left and right, and hurled his spear, a glinting brazen streak, and the Trojans scattered, cringing before his shaft, no wasted shot. Anticulus hit Hesition's son, impetuous Menalippus, sweeping into battle, slashed him across the chest beside the nipple. Down he crashed, and the darkness swirled in his eyes, with Anticulus rushing over him like some hound pouncing down on a deer that has just been wounded. Leaping out of its lair, a hunter speared it, a lethal hit that's loosed and springy limbs. So staunch Anticulus leapt at you, Melanippus, stripping away your gear. But Hector marked it now, and straight through the ruck he charged Anticulus, hard. Quick as that fighter was, he could not hold his ground. Not there. He turned tail and broke like a rogue beast. That's done some serious damage, mauled a dog to death or a herdsman tending flocks, and takes to his heels before the gang of men can go against him. So Anticulus turned and ran. A savage cry went up, and Hector and all his Trojans showered deadly shafts in hot pursuit. But he wheeled and stood his ground, and when he reached his thronging cohorts. Now to the ships. Now, like a pride of man-eating lions, the Trojan forces stormed the fleet, fulfilling Zeus's strict commands, as Zeus kept building their fury higher, stunned at the Argive spirit, and wrenched away their glory, lashing Trojans on. The father's will was set on glory over to Hector, son of Priam, that he might hurl his torch at the Greek ships, the force of fire, quenchless, ravening fire, yes, and bring it to its bitter end, the disastrous prayer of Thetis. For that alone he waited, the god who rules the world, to see with his own eyes the first Achaean ship go up in a blaze of flames. Then, from that point on, he thrust the Trojans breakneck back from the fleet, and gave the Argives glory. Dead set now on that, he drove Prince Hector against the hollow hulls, though the son of Priam raged in his own right, raged like Ares with brandished spear, or flashed fire, roaring down from a ridge into thick strands of timber. The foam flecked in his mouth, and his eyes shot flame. Glaring under his shaggy brows, and round his head, his helmet shook and clashed. A terrific wild din, Hector on the attack, and high in the clear sky, Zeus himself defended his champion. Hector alone he prized and glorified among the hordes of men, for Hector's life would be cut so short so soon. Why, even now Athena was speeding the fatal day, when he would fall to the power of great Achilles. But now he was bent on breaking men, probing the lines wherever he saw the largest mass and the finest gear. But he could not smash through yet for all his fury. They closed ranks. They packed like a stone wall, a granite cliff that towers against churning surf, standing up to the screaming winds, their sudden assaults. And breaking waves, they spawned that crash against its base. So the Danaans stood the Trojan onslaught, rock solid and never flinched in fear. But Hector, all afire, blazing head to foot, charged at their main forces, bursting down as a wave burst down on a veering ship. Down from the clouds it batters, bred by gale winds, showers of foam overwhelm the hull, blotted all from sight. The hurricane's killing blast, thundering into their sails, and scudding clear of death by the skin of their teeth. The sailors quake, their hearts race on with terror. So the Achaeans' courage quaked, and Hector lunged again, like a murderous lion mad for kills, charging cattle, grazing across the flats of a broad, marshy pasture, flocks by the hundred, led by an unskilled herdsman, helpless to keep the marauder off, a long-horn heifer. No fighting that bloody slaughter. All he can do is keep pace with the lead or straggling heads, leave the centre free for the big cat's pounce, and it eats a heifer raw as the rest stampede away. And so the Achaeans stampeded now, unearthly terror, all of them routed now by Father Zeus and Hector, though Hector killed just one, Periphetes, the Mysian, favourite son of Coprius, Eurystheus' herald, who summoned rugged Heracles time and again into grinding labours. Coprius, yes, that worthless father who sired a better son, better at every skill, primed for speed and war, and his wits outstripped the best in all Mycenae. But all of it went now to build Prince Hector's glory. As the Argive spun in retreat, its shield rim tripped him. Down to his feet, that shield he bore to keep off spears. He stumbled over it now, pitched back, helmet clanging harshly against his brows as the man hit the ground. But Hector marked him at once, rushed up to his side and staked a spear in his chest to kill the fighter, right in the eyes of loyal comrades standing by. Sick for their friend, but what could they do? Nothing. Just shake with dread in the face of mighty Hector. Now the Achaeans milled among the shipways, shielded round by the looming superstructures, stern on stern, drawn up in the first line inland. But the Trojans stormed them there, and back they fell. They had no choice, edging away from the front ships. But once at the tents nearby, they held their grounds, massing ranks, no scattering back through the camp. Their proud discipline gripped them, terror too. They rallied each other non-stop, war cries rising. Noble Nestor was first, Archaea's watch and ward, pleading, begging each man for his parents' sake. Be men, my friends. Discipline, fill your hearts. Maintain your pride in the eyes of other men. Remember each of you, sons, wives, wealth, parents, our mother and father dead or alive. No matter. I beg you for their sakes, loved ones far away. Now stand and fight. No turning back. No panic. With that he put new strength in each man's spirit. Athena thrust from their eyes the blinding battle haze, the darkness sent by the gods, and a hard bright light burst down in both directions, out to the ships, and down the lines where fighting drew dead even. Now they could make out Hector, lord of war cry, all his troops, squads in reserve and clear of battle, forward squads that fought at the fast trim ships. Ajax's challenge. How could it please his courage still to hang back now, while other Archaeans held the rear? No more. Up and down the decks of the ship he went, with his great plunging strides, swinging in hand his enormous polished pike for fights at sea, clamped with clinchers 22 forearms long. Ajax, skilled as a show rider, a virtuoso horseman who picks from the herd 4 stallions, yokes them tight, and galloping off the plain, comes racing towards a large city, over a trafficked road, and the crowds gaze in wonder. Men and women watching, as sure-footed, never a slip. The rider keeps on leaping, swinging from back to back, and the pounding team flies on. So Ajax swung now, leaping from deck to deck on the fast trim ships, ranging with huge strides as his voice hit the skies, keeping up a terrific bellowing, calling Argives on to defend the ships and shelters. And Hector too, how could he hold back with his massing armoured Trojans, now like a flashing eagle, swooping down on bird flocks, winged thousands fleeting, swarming a river's banks, geese, cranes, or swans, with their long lancing necks. So swooping Hector went head first at a warship, charging its purple prow, and Zeus behind him thrust him on in his mighty deathless hand, urging the soldiers who crowded Hector's back. And again a desperate battle broke at the ships. You'd think they'd waded into the fighting, fresh troops, unbruised, unbroken. They fought with such new fire. And what were the fighters thinking? Only this. The Argives, certain that they'd never flee the worst. They perished then and there, but the hope soared in every Trojan heart to torch the ships and slaughter Argive heroes. So ran their thoughts, closing for the kill. At last Hector grappled the ship's stern, a beauty built for speed. It swept the seas with At last Hector grappled a ship's stern, a beauty built for speed. It swept the seas with Protesilaus, bore him to Troy, but now never bore him back again to his fatherland. Now churning round that ship, Achaeans and Trojans hacked each other at close range. No more war at a distance, waiting to take long flights of spears and arrows. They stood there man to man and matched their fury, killing each other now with hatchets, battle axes, big swords, 2-edged spears, and many a blade. Magnificent, heavy-hilted and thronged in black, lay strewn on the ground. Some dropped from their hands, some fell as the fighters' shoulder straps were cut, and the earth ran black with blood. And Hector held fast. He never let go of the high stern. He hugged its horn, arms locked in death grip, crying out to Trojans, "Bring fire, up with the war cries, all together. Now, Zeus, hand us a day worth all the rest. Today we seize these ships." They stormed ashore against the will of the gods. They came here freighted with years of pain for us, and thanks to our city leaders. What cowards! Whenever I longed to fight at the ship's high sterns, the old men kept me back. They held the troops in check. But if Zeus's lightning blinded us those days, it's Zeus who drives us, hurls us on today. The harder he cried, the harder his forces charged against the Argives. Not even Ajax held his post, no longer now. So forced by the shafts, he backed away by inches, certain he'd die there. Down he leapt from the decks, down to bestride the 7-foot bridge amidships. There he stood, tensing, braced to take them on. His huge pike kept beating the Trojans off the hulls. Any attacker flinging tireless fire, and all the time that terrible voice of his, bellowing out to his cohorts, "Friends, fighting Danaans, aids in arms of Ares, fight like men, my comrades, call up your battle fury. You think we have reserves in the rear to back us up? Some stronger wall to shield our men from disaster? No, there's no great citadel standing near with towers, where we could defend ourselves and troops could turn the tide. No, we're here on the plains of Troy, all Troy's in arms, dug in, backs to the sea, land of our fathers far, far away. Fight, the light of safety lies in our fighting hands, not spines grown soft in battle." And with each new cry, he thrust his slashing pike with fresh new fury. And any Trojan crashing against the beaked ships, torch ablaze in hand, straining to please Hector, who urged him on, Ajax ready and waiting there, would stab each man with his long, rugged pike. 12 he impaled point blank, struggling up the hulls.